Okay, so here we're going to be looking at firm level emission quotas and tradable emission permits. This is from chapter 13 in my microeconomics textbook. I'm Rickard Friberg. Okay, so we're looking at two firms that are they're producing something. I've looked at paper before, so we can continue saying that. The production of this good is associated with pollution. Okay, so they're emitting pollution, and we're interested in seeing how we can use regulations to limit the amount of pollution. So we could be using a tax, a Pigouvian tax, to have a tax per unit of pollutants that emitted, but we could also be using a quota, saying that as a firm, you are allowed to emit this much. So if we have quantity of pollution here on the horizontal axis, and we have cost in euros on the vertical axis, we could look at the situation of two firms that differ in their cost of limiting pollution. Okay, so we had before what we call the marginal abatement cost. So here's the marginal abatement cost for a firm that, say, has high abatement costs. So if it doesn't limit pollution at all, it would emit this much. If it limits pollution, these are the marginal cost of limiting pollution at each point. Okay. So presume that this firm, for instance, has somewhat old technology that it uses to limit pollution. Then we have another firm, let's do that green, that has a lower cost of limiting pollution. So like so. So we're call that the marginal abatement cost low. Okay, so for every amount of pollution that these firms emit, the cost of limiting pollution for the more efficient firm here, the one with lower abatement cost, is lower than for the other. So now assume that there's a quota, that there's a policy saying that as a firm, you can emit at most this much pollution. Okay, so this is the amount of pollution that you can emit, and you have to limit pollution by this amount. Okay. So at this quota, what's the marginal cost for firm H limiting pollution there? Well, it has a fairly high marginal cost. So this is a marginal cost for limiting pollution for the high cost producer. Whereas for the lower cost producer, its marginal cost of limiting pollution at this point is lower and given by its marginal cost. Okay, so both firms are emitting the same amount of pollution, but they differ in their costs of doing so. So we could then note that at such a situation, we could achieve the same amount of limiting of pollution, could limit pollution by the same amount by reshuffling across these firms. Okay, so we could have the more efficient firm emit less. So it would limit pollution, say to this point, having this marginal cost. Okay, so it would limit pollution by this much, pulling back even further. Okay, at the same time, we could think that if we keep the amount of pollution fixed, we could say, well, this firm limits so that the other firm can expand. So the other firm expands its pollution to a point like this. So same amount to a point like this. Okay, so you know the costs are falling, and in general we could say we're achieving the same amount of pollution, but at a lower cost. Okay, so this is one part of why tradable emission permits are seen as attractive. Okay, there are additional parts. In particular, it gives incentives to invest in clean technology, and it creates additional flexibility in the system.